My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I stood in my dark garage at 3 in the morning, the only light coming from the pale blue glow of my phone screen. In my other hand, I held the key to my brother-in-law's sedan, a stupid, sensible silver car he loved more than he'd ever loved my sister. I was sure of it. My plan was simple. I would drive it to the abandoned warehouse district on the east side of Kansas City, leave it running with the doors unlocked, and walk away. In that neighborhood, it would be gone in 10 minutes, stripped for parts or joy-ridden into a river. I didn't care which. I just wanted it gone. I wanted him to hurt. I wanted her to see what happened when you broke apart a family, the cold metal of the key bit into my palm. This wasn't me. At least, the me I used to be. Alice McCain, 34, junior high art teacher, Sunday school volunteer, but that woman felt like a ghost now, hollowed out by a bitterness that tasted like copper in my mouth. Tonight, that ghost was going to act. My breath came in short, white puffs in the chilly garage air. This was the point of no return. I lifted my hand toward the car door, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. But to understand how I got here, I need to take you back to where it all began. It began 14 months ago, on a perfectly normal Tuesday. I was at my apartment in Kansas City, grading a pile of truly terrible clay gargoyles my 7th graders had made. When my phone rang, it was my younger sister, Melissa. We were close. The kind of close that comes from being the only 2 kids in a family that moved around a lot. We'd lived in 4 different states growing up, but we'd always had each other. She was 29, vibrant, and always a little messy, in a way I secretly envied. I was the organized, responsible one. She was the one who chased fun. "Hey Al, you got a sec?" Her voice sounded funny, thin. "For you?" "Always." "What's up? Did you finally kill that spider plant I told you to stop overwatering?" She didn't laugh. "It's Jason." Jason was her husband of 5 years. Jason Miller. He was an insurance adjuster, a guy who wore polo shirts tucked neatly into khakis. He was fine. Boring, but fine. He'd always been nice to me. What about him? He finally get that fantasy football trophy he's been crying about? Alice. Her voice broke. "He's having an affair." The words didn't make sense at first. They buzzed in my ear like static. I set down the grotesque clay face I was holding. "What? No. Jason? Are you sure?" She was crying now, the kind of ragged, gasping sobs that come from your stomach. "I'm sure. I found the texts on his iPad. It's been going on for 6 months. It's someone from his office." The next few hours were a blur. I drove to their little beige house in the suburb of Raytown. Melissa was a wreck on the couch, surrounded by crumpled tissues. I made tea she didn't drink. I said all the things you're supposed to say. "He's a jerk. You deserve better. I'm here for you." I held her while she cried, and under all my sympathy, a cold, hard knot of anger started to form. How dare he? How dare he do this to her? To our family? Before I continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your location and what time it is where you are in the comments. It means the world to me to know who's hearing this story. In the weeks that followed, I became Melissa's personal bodyguard, therapist, and war counsel. I went with her to a lawyer's office. I helped her change the locks when Jason moved out. I listened to her cry. I fueled her anger when she needed to be angry. And I prayed with her when she felt like praying. That was the hardest part, the praying, because my prayers felt like they were hitting the ceiling and bouncing right back. I'd pray, "God, comfort Melissa." But what I was really thinking was, "God, smite Jason." I'd pray, "God, bring justice," but I meant, "God, ruin his life." Melissa was a wreck. But she was trying. She started going to a support group at church. She'd say things like, "I'm trying to forgive him. For me, I know I need to." And I'd nod and say, "That's good, Mel." But inside I'd scream, "No, don't forgive him. He doesn't deserve it." My faith, which had always been a quiet, steady part of my life, felt suddenly useless. It didn't stop bad things from happening. It didn't make the pain go away. It just offered this impossible command: forgive. Then, 3 months after the bomb dropped, Melissa asked me to meet her for coffee. She looked better. She'd gotten a haircut. There was a light in her eyes that hadn't been there since D-Day, as we'd come to call it. "I have something to tell you," she said, stirring her latte. And I need you to not freak out. Okay, I said, immediately on alert. Jason and we've been talking. We're going to try marriage counseling. The air left my lungs. I stared at her. You're what? He's been in counseling on his own. He ended the affair completely. He's remorseful, Alice. Truly. He's been reading his Bible, meeting with Pastor Rick. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like a betrayal of me, of all the nights I'd spent holding her, of all the plans we'd made for her new, Jason-free life. Melissa, he cheated on you. He lied to you for half a year. You can't just take him back. It's not just taking him back, she said, her voice firming up. It's a process. It's going to be long and hard. But I still love him, and I believe God is in this. I believe in redemption. The word redemption tasted like ash in my mouth. Where was my redemption from all this pain? From carrying her burden? I felt like a fool. All my rage, my protectiveness, my plans for vengeance. She was just going to fold and let him back in? I wish I could tell you I was supportive. I wish I could tell you, I said, I'll pray for you. But I didn't. The cold knot in my stomach turned into a boulder. I felt like she was choosing him over me. Choosing his redemption over my right to be angry. I think this is a huge mistake, I said, my voice flat. You're going to get hurt again. The light in her eyes dimmed a little. I need you with me, Alice. I stood up, throwing a $5 bill on the table. I can't watch you do this. I love you too much to watch you walk back into a burning building. And I walked out. That was the last real conversation we had for 11 months. I watched from a distance. I saw Jason move back in. I saw their social media posts, forced smiles at first, then gradually more genuine ones. Photos of a weekend trip to Branson. A new puppy. My bitterness grew roots and vines that wrapped around my heart, cutting off the light. My prayers stopped completely. What was the point? God was clearly on team forgiveness. And I was stuck here in the cold, alone, holding the bag of all this righteous anger that nobody wanted anymore. My own life felt gray. I went to church out of habit, but I sat in the back and left quickly. The joy of my job faded. Everything felt like a betrayal. My friends who said, maybe it's time to let it go, felt like traitors. My parents who were cautiously supportive of Melissa's choice felt like they were taking his side. The breaking point came last week. Melissa called. I let it go to voicemail. She sounded bright, hopeful. Hey Al, it's me. Look, I know things have been weird, but Jason and I are in a really good place. Truly. We're celebrating our new start anniversary with a dinner this Friday night. Just us. And I know it's a lot to ask, but could you maybe come by and watch Noah for us? Noah. Their 3-year-old. My nephew who I'd barely seen in a year. Her voice cracked. He misses his Aunt Alice. I miss you. Please? The message ended. I sat there, holding my phone. She wanted me to provide the childcare so they could go celebrate the redemption I didn't believe in, so they could toast to the forgiveness that made me feel so alone. It was the ultimate insult. The final proof that my pain, my loyalty, meant nothing. That's when the plan hatched in my mind. It was ugly and small, born in that dark, vine-choked place in my soul. They were leaving at 7. I had a key to their house from before. When I used to water their plants, I would go over early, say I was there to watch Noah, be the good sister. I would take Jason's car key from the hook by the garage door. I would wait until they were gone, until Noah was asleep, and then I would make his precious car disappear. It wasn't about the car. It was about taking something he loved. It was about introducing a little chaos into their perfect, redeemed little world. It was about making him feel a fraction of the powerlessness I felt. So that's how I ended up in my garage at 3 a.m. Keys in my trembling hand, ready to become a thief, ready to burn the last bridge I had left. I was so tired of being the one drowning in the bitter water while they sailed on. Forgiven. It was my turn to make a wave. I slid the key into the car door lock. The click sounded like a gunshot in the silent garage. The click of the car door unlocking echoed in the garage. It was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. My breath caught, and for a second, I just stood there, my forehead resting against the cold window of Jason's sedan. I could see my own reflection, wide, shadowed eyes. A face twisted with a feeling I couldn't even name anymore. This was it. I pulled the door open. The interior light came on, illuminating the bland, gray upholstery. It smelled like the lemon-scented cleaner Jason used and, faintly, of the fast food coffee he always drank. I slid into the driver's seat. The leather was cold. I put the key in the ignition but didn't turn it. My plan, which had felt so solid and righteous in the planning, felt flimsy and stupid here in the execution. What if Noah wakes up? A practical part of my brain whispered. I'd checked on him twice. He was sleeping hard, his little arm thrown over his stuffed dinosaur. He wouldn't wake. What if a neighbor sees you? It was 3 a.m. on a dead-end street in Raytown. No one would see. But then another voice, quieter and much more annoying, piped up. What are you doing, Alice? I shoved it down. I was getting justice. I was balancing the scales. I was making the pain visible. Melissa's pain had been invisible, private, hidden in tear-soaked pillows. Jason's consequence would be public, obvious: a missing car, a police report, insurance headaches. He would feel it. I turned the key. The engine purred to life, disturbingly quiet for a car about to be sacrificed. I clicked the garage door opener clipped to the visor. As the door rumbled upward, revealing the inky black street, a memory flashed, unwanted and bright. It was from 4 years ago. Melissa was pregnant with Noah, huge and uncomfortable in the middle of a sweltering Kansas City August. Their old AC unit had died. Jason was at work, and she'd called me, near tears from the heat. I'd come over with fans and popsicles. As we sat in the barely moving air, she'd looked at me, her hand on her belly, and said, I don't know what I'd do without you, Al. You're my rock. I'd felt so strong, so needed. Where was that sister now? The one who needed me? She'd been replaced by this stranger who talked about forgiveness and fresh starts. The garage door was fully open. I put the car in reverse, my foot hovering over the gas. A verse I hadn't thought of in years drifted through my head. I didn't even know where it was from. See to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and by it many become defiled. My old Sunday school teacher, Mrs. Jenkins, had made us memorize it. A root of bitterness. That's what I had. A whole twisted tree of it, and I was about to let it cause a whole lot of trouble. I backed slowly out of the garage, the headlights cutting 2 paths through the darkness. I pulled onto the empty street, pointing the car toward the highway that would take me to the east side. With every house I passed, every darkened window where families slept, I felt more alone. The anger that had fueled me was burning down, leaving behind the cold, heavy ashes of shame. This was wrong. I knew it was wrong. But stopping now felt like surrendering. It felt like admitting that my pain didn't matter, that my anger was invalid. If I didn't go through with this, then the last year of holding on to this hurt was for nothing. I drove toward the on-ramp for I-70. The city at night was a different place. A stream of silent streetlights and the occasional lonely truck. I rolled down the window, letting the frigid air blast my face. Just do it. Just get it over with. Leave the car and call an Uber. Be done with it. But as I merged onto the nearly empty highway, something else caught my eye. On the passenger seat, peeking out from under a travel atlas, was a small, folded piece of construction paper. I recognized the cheap, thick paper we used in my art classroom. With one hand on the wheel, I reached over and picked it up. I unfolded it under the glow of the dashboard lights. It was a drawing, clearly done by a child. 3 stick figures, one with a triangle dress. Melissa, one tall with rectangles for a body, Jason, and a small one in the middle. They were all holding hands. Above them, in wobbly letters written with green crayon, it said, My Famie is back. Thank you, God. Love, Noah. The words hit me like a physical blow. My vision blurred. I swerved slightly, the tires thumping over the highway rumble strips, and I jerked the wheel back, my heart now pounding for a completely different reason. I took the next exit, my hands slippery on the wheel, and pulled into the vast, deserted parking lot of a closed big box store. I turned off the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. I sat there in the dark, holding Noah's drawing, staring at those terrible, beautiful words. My fammy is back. This wasn't about Jason. It wasn't even really about Melissa anymore. It was about a 3-year-old boy who had his daddy back home. A little boy who had drawn a picture thanking God for it. And I, his aunt, the person who used to make him peanut butter sandwiches cut into dinosaur shapes, was about to commit a crime that would shatter that fragile piece all over again. I would be the one causing the new hurt. I would be the chaos in his world. The bitter tree inside me cracked. A sob erupted from somewhere deep, a raw, ugly sound that echoed in the silent car. I cried for my sister's pain. I cried for my own loneliness. I cried because I missed my nephew. I cried because I was sitting in a stolen car, and I was the bad guy. The verse came back, complete this time. Hebrews 12:15. I was the defiled one. My bitterness hadn't hurt Jason. It had only poisoned me. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the sky in the east to lighten from black to deep indigo. Dawn was coming. I had to take the car back. I had to get it into the garage before anyone woke up and realized it was gone. The thought of sneaking it back, of pretending this night never happened, was almost more humiliating than getting caught, but it was the only path forward that didn't lead to total ruin. I started the car and began the long, shame-filled drive back to Raytown. The weight of what I'd almost done pressed down on me. I had truly been capable of it. The knowledge of my own darkness was the worst consequence of all. I pulled onto their street just as the first birds began to chirp. The houses were still dark. I eased the car back into the garage, killed the engine, and closed the door. The soft thud of it shutting felt like a seal on my failure. I crept back into the house, replaced the key on the hook, and stood in the dark living room, listening to the quiet. My legs felt like water. I needed to sleep, but I knew I wouldn't. I had to be gone before they woke up. I couldn't face them. I was halfway to the front door when the hallway light flicked on. Melissa stood there wrapped in her fuzzy pink robe, her hair messy from sleep. She blinked at me, confused. "Alice?" she whispered. "What are you doing? Is everything okay? Did something happen with Noah?" I froze. Caught in the light. I had no story. No excuse. My face was surely blotchy from crying. I was still wearing my coat from the night before. The guilt was a neon sign on my forehead. I couldn't sleep, I stammered. The lamest lie in history. I was just checking on things. She took a step closer, her eyes searching mine. The confusion in them softened into concern. "You look awful. Come on. It's too early. Come sit in the kitchen. I'll make you some tea." She turned and padded toward the kitchen, not waiting for an answer. She thought I was having a breakdown over her problems. Her kindness, in this moment, was worse than any accusation. I was trapped. I couldn't run now without looking even more insane. I followed her, the roots of my bitterness now tangling with strands of a shame so deep I thought I might drown in it. The first rays of morning sun were starting to bleed through the kitchen window, and I knew I was about to sit at my sister's table, drinking her tea, with a secret between us that was darker than anything her husband had ever done. The kitchen was too bright. Melissa flicked on the overhead light, and it felt like an interrogation lamp. I slid into a chair at the oak table, the same table where we'd painted pottery as teenagers, where Mom had served 1,000 meals. It felt alien now. I watched her fill the kettle, her movements sleepy and familiar. The normalcy of it was a knife twist. "You really didn't have to stay so late," she said, her back to me. "I know Noah can be a handful at bedtime. Thank you. It meant a lot that you came." Each word was a weight on my chest. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. "A confession? I was going to destroy your husband's car to punish you both. But I saw Noah's drawing. It was too monstrous to say aloud. So I sat in the silence, which felt just as monstrous. She brought 2 mugs of peppermint tea to the table and sat across from me. She blew on the steam, studying me over the rim. "Talk to me, Al. This isn't just about you being tired. Is it work? Is it something else?" The concern in her eyes was my undoing. The last frayed thread of my composure snapped. A fresh, hot tear spilled over and traced a path down my cheek. I looked down, swiping at it angrily. I'm so angry, Mel. It was the truest thing I could say without telling the whole truth. She reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Her touch was warm. I hadn't realized how cold I was. "At me? she asked softly. I shook my head. But it was a lie. I was angry at her. For moving on. For not needing my protection anymore. For making me feel like the broken one because I couldn't keep up with her forgiveness. At everything, I whispered. At him. At the situation. At God. For not fixing it the way I wanted. She nodded slowly, not letting go of my hand. I was angry too. For a long time. Sometimes I still am. It comes in waves. She took a slow sip of tea. You know what the hardest part was? It wasn't even the betrayal. Not really. It was the loneliness. Feeling like I was the only one carrying the shame of it. Even though I hadn't done anything wrong. I stared at her. That was exactly how I felt. The lonely guardian of a hurt that everyone else seemed ready to forget. But I couldn't admit that. My role was to be the strong one. The angry one on her behalf. To admit I felt abandoned in this too. Would have meant admitting how much I'd needed her just as much as she'd needed me. I don't get it, I said, my voice thick. How you can just let him back in, how you can trust him. It feels like you're saying what he did was okay. Melissa's face tightened, and for a second I saw the old pain, raw and close to the surface. It will never be okay, Alice. What he did was horrible. It shattered me. Letting him back in isn't saying it was okay, it's saying... She searched for the words. It's saying the story isn't over yet. We're writing a different chapter, a harder one. And it costs me something every single day. Trust isn't a light switch you flip back on. It's 100 tiny choices. He has to earn every one. And what do you get out of it? The question was harsh, but I needed to know. I get to not be consumed by it, she said simply. I get to look at my son and not have my heart full of acid when I see his father's face in his. I get to sleep at night. Mostly. She squeezed my hand. And I get to choose the kind of person I want to be. I don't want to be defined by what was done to me. I want to be defined by what I choose to do after. Her words landed softly, but they felt like an indictment. I was defined by what was done to her. My identity for the last year had been professional wounded sister. Who was I without that? Footsteps padded down the hall. Jason appeared in the doorway, dressed in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair sticking up. He looked from Melissa to me, and his friendly, morning smile faltered. Oh, hey Alice, you're here early. His eyes flicked to our joined hands on the table, to my tear-stained face. Awkwardness filled the room like a fog. Alice couldn't sleep, Melissa said, her voice a gentle bridge over the tension. Right, Jason said, shoving his hands in his pockets. He looked genuinely uncomfortable, but not guilty. Just aware. Deeply aware of the crater his actions had left, and that I was still standing on the jagged edge of it. Well, I'll just get some coffee started. As he turned to the counter, I saw him. Really saw him. Not the cartoon villain I'd painted in my mind, but a tired-looking man in his 30s, moving carefully in his own kitchen, trying not to make any sudden moves. He was trying. The realization disgusted me. I didn't want him to try. I wanted him to be a monster, because it's easier to hate a monster. Noah's cheerful babbling echoed from the baby monitor on the counter. The normal morning was beginning, and I was a cancerous growth in the middle of it. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping the floor. I should go. I have things. Melissa stood too. Alice, wait, please. I'm tired, I said. And it was the truth. I was soul tired. I grabbed my coat from the back of the chair. Jason turned from the coffee maker. Alice, he said, his voice quiet but clear. Thank you for watching Noah last night. It meant a lot to us. It was a simple, polite sentence, but it was the first time he'd spoken directly to me, acknowledging my presence in their new life. Since before the affair, he wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was just saying thank you. The grace in it, small as it was, disarmed me completely. My carefully constructed wall of rage had no defense against simple, awkward kindness. I just nodded, a stiff, jerky motion, and fled. The next week was a haze of shame. I called in sick to work for 2 days, claiming a migraine. I couldn't face my students, their bright, trusting faces. I was a fraud. I lay on my couch, scrolling mindlessly through my phone. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw the dashboard lights, felt the key in my hand, saw Noah's crayon drawing. The memory of that drawing led me to do something I hadn't done in months. I opened the Bible app on my phone. I typed in bitterness. The verse from Hebrews popped up again. I read the context. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. It was about running a race, and I was stuck, tangled in my own bitter roots, going nowhere. I felt a pull, a faint, dusty longing for the faith that used to feel like a quiet anchor, but it felt out of reach, like trying to grab a rope from the middle of a muddy pit. My own actions had pushed me deeper into the mud. On Thursday, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peered through the peephole. It was Jason. My stomach dropped. He'd found out. He'd checked security cameras on the street. He'd seen me take the car. He was here to confront me. This was it. The consequence. Part of me was almost relieved. I opened the door, bracing for the blow. He stood there, hands in his jacket pockets, looking even more awkward than he had in the kitchen. "Hey," he said. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" I nodded, stepping back to let him in. My heart hammering. He walked into my small living room, glancing around but not really seeing anything. He didn't sit. "I'll get right to it," he said, clearing his throat. "I know you hate me, and you have every right to. I don't expect that to change. What I did, it wasn't just a mistake. It was a series of selfish, horrible choices that broke your sister's heart and tore your family apart. I own that." I just stared at him, silent. "I'm not here to ask you to forgive me," he continued, his voice low and earnest. "That's not your job. I'm here because Melissa misses her sister. And that's my fault too. The distance between you two is a direct consequence of what I did." He took a shaky breath. "So I'm asking you, for her sake, to try. To be in her life. To be Noah's aunt again. Don't let my failure cost her that too. You can hate me forever. That's fine. I deserve it. But please don't punish her by staying away." He wasn't defending himself. He wasn't making excuses. He was accepting the full weight of the collateral damage. Damage that included my broken relationship with my sister. He was pleading for her healing, not his own. The anger I wanted to cling to had nothing to burn. He was handing me all the blame, and it felt hollow. It didn't fix the garage, or the trembling in my hands, or the shame in my heart. My secret sat between us, a far worse crime in that moment than anything he was confessing. He was waiting for an answer. I had to say something. "It's not that simple," I managed to croak out. "I know," he said. "Nothing about this is simple." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I am sorry. Not just for hurting her, but for what it took from you too." He left, closing the door softly behind him. I sank onto the couch, my mind reeling. His apology hadn't set me free. It had cornered me. He was walking the hard, costly road of repentance, and I was skulking in the shadows with my own unforgiveness and my own secret sin. The moral high ground I thought I'd been standing on had just crumbled into nothing. I was no better. In the quiet of my apartment, a new and terrifying thought whispered, "You might be worse." He had fallen and was trying to get up. I had chosen to kneel in the mud and call it justice. The cliffhanger of his visit wasn't about being caught. It was about being seen not for what I'd almost done, but for who I'd become in my bitterness. And the person I saw reflected in his honest, pained apology was someone I didn't recognize and didn't want to be. The real crisis was no longer what I had done to them, but what I was allowing this poison to do to me, and I had no idea how to make it stop. Jason's apology left me hollowed out. For days, his words replayed in my head. "You can hate me forever. That's fine. I deserve it." He had given me permission to stay in my anger, and it was the last thing I wanted. Permission made it feel cheap. My rage had been my fortress, my reason for pulling away from God, my excuse for the dark turn my thoughts had taken. Now, the fortress walls were showing cracks, and the cold wind blowing through was just shame. I went back to work. My 7th graders were working on collage projects about identity. As I walked between the tables, smeared with glue and scattered with magazine clippings, I felt like a hypocrite. What was my identity now? The betrayed sister? The would-be criminal? The bitter woman pushing everyone away? One of my students, a quiet boy named Sam, was meticulously cutting out a picture of a towering ancient redwood tree. "That's a great choice, Sam," I said, stopping by his desk. "It's for my foundation," he said, not looking up. "My grandpa says you have to have deep roots so storms can't knock you down." "But," he hesitated, frowning at the glossy page, "what if your roots are bad? Like, what if they're rotten?" The question was so innocent, so perfectly aimed, it stole my breath. "Then I guess you have to grow new ones," I said softly, more to myself than to him. I needed to do something normal, something that felt like the old Alice. On Saturday, I forced myself to go to the grocery store. I was in the cereal aisle, staring blankly at a wall of colorful boxes, when I heard a familiar voice. "Alice McCain? Is that you?" I turned. It was Mrs. Henderson, my Sunday school teacher from when I was 12. She had to be 80 now, but she still had the same bright, bird-like eyes and kind smile. She wore a fuzzy purple cardigan and leaned on a shopping cart. "Mrs. Henderson." "Hi," I said, a real smile touching my face for the first time in weeks. "My dear, it's so good to see you." She reached out and patted my arm. "I've missed you at church. I always look for your messy bun in the third row." Guilt prickled. "I've been a little out of sorts lately." Her perceptive eyes studied me. "Well, life has storms, doesn't it? I was just thinking I needed some cookie ingredients. You used to love my snickerdoodles. Come help an old lady pick out some cinnamon." It wasn't a request. I followed her to the baking aisle. We chatted about nothing, the unseasonably warm fall, the high school football team. It was easy. She didn't ask prying questions. When we found the cinnamon, she placed a jar in her cart and then turned to me, her expression gentle but serious. "You know, Alice, I always remembered you had such a tender heart. You cried when we learned about Jonah in the whale because you felt sorry for the fish." She chuckled. "A tender heart is a beautiful thing, but it's also a vulnerable thing. It can get wounded, and when it does, it sometimes tries to build a wall of thorns around itself to keep from being hurt again." I looked down at the linoleum floor, my throat tight. She saw right through me. "The trouble is," she continued, her voice soft, "those thorns don't keep the pain out, they just keep you in. And they prick you every time you try to move." She reached into her purse, pulled out a tiny, worn notebook and a pen, and wrote something down. She tore out the page and pressed it into my hand. "I'm an old woman who prays simple prayers. I'll be praying one for you. You don't have to be alone in your storm, dear." Before I could respond, she gave my hand a squeeze and pushed her cart toward the dairy section. I looked down at the slip of paper. In her looping, elegant handwriting, she had written a single reference. Psalm 147:3. I finished my shopping in a daze. When I got to my car, I sat in the driver's seat and opened the Bible app on my phone. I found the verse. "He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds." It was a simple promise. Too simple. It felt like putting a tiny bandage on a gaping, infected wound. My heart isn't just broken, I thought bitterly. It's complicit. It's rotten-rooted. Could a heart that had planned something so petty and cruel even be considered broken-hearted? Or was it just hard? Yet, Mrs. Henderson's kindness, the remembering, the noticing my absence, the simple act of writing down a verse was a pinprick of light in the murk I'd been swimming in. It was a quiet mercy. She hadn't preached. She hadn't asked for my story. She had just seen I was hurting and offered a fragment of hope. It was the faithfulness of someone else when my own faith had failed. That tiny crack of light let in a sliver of courage. On Sunday morning, the thought of church still made me feel nauseous with hypocrisy. But I thought of Mrs. Henderson looking for my messy bun. I didn't go to the service. Instead, I drove to the church parking lot at 10 a.m., just as people were filing in. I sat in my car, engine off, watching families and older couples walk toward the doors. I felt like an observer on another planet. My phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. It was a picture of Noah, covered in finger paint, grinning a blue-toothed grin. The caption read, "Someone decided the living room wall was a canvas. Having one of those days. Miss you." It was a normal text. A sister sharing a frustrating, funny moment. She was extending a bridge. Again, over a chasm I had helped dig. The normalcy of it, the simple love in it, warred with the monumental strangeness of what I held inside. I looked from the phone screen to the church doors, then back to the verse still open on my console. He heals the brokenhearted. A sudden, impulsive thought seized me. I couldn't walk into that building, but maybe I didn't have to. I got out of my car and walked around to the side of the church, to a small, forgotten memorial garden. It was just a patch of grass with a stone bench and a few hardy chrysanthemums. It was empty. I sat on the cold stone bench. The distant sound of the opening worship song filtered through the walls. I put my head in my hands. I didn't know how to pray. The words felt stuck, so I just thought them raw and ugly. I am so angry. I'm so ashamed. I wanted to hurt them. I almost did. I hate that I wanted to. I hate that he's trying. I hate that she's forgiving him. I hate that I'm the one who's stuck. My roots are rotten. I'm tangled in thorns. I don't know how to get out. There was no lightning bolt, no warm feeling, just the chill of the autumn air and the ache in my chest. But for the first time in over a year, I had spoken the truth not to a person, but into the silence, toward God. I had stopped pretending my anger was righteous. I had named it for what it was, a wound that had festered. I sat there until the music inside stopped. I heard the faint murmur of the sermon beginning. I stood up, my legs stiff. I hadn't been healed. My heart still felt like a shattered jar. But maybe, just maybe, acknowledging the pieces was the first step to gathering them up. I drove home feeling fragile. The act of that messy, silent confession had left me emotionally raw. When I walked into my apartment, the blinking light on my landline answering machine caught my eye. I never used it, only telemarketers, and I pressed play. "Alice, honey, it's Mom." My mother's voice, always slightly too loud on recordings, filled the quiet room. "Listen, your father and I are coming into town next weekend. We want to see you, and we're having a family dinner over at Melissa and Jason's on Saturday. I've already talked to her. She's making a pot roast. We expect you there at 6. No excuses, all right? We love you." The message ended with a beep. My blood ran cold. A family dinner. At their house. With my parents, who knew only that I was struggling with Melissa's reconciliation. With Jason, who had asked me not to punish her. With Melissa, who was trying so hard. And with me, holding a secret that would detonate the entire fragile peace. I had 1 week. 1 week to figure out how to sit at that table, to break bread with the man I'd tried to ruin, to look my sister in the eye, and to somehow keep the truth from spilling out and destroying everything. The thought of it made my skin crawl. I couldn't go, but my mother's no excuses tone meant I couldn't skip it without causing a different kind of drama. I was trapped. The first tiny, honest prayer I'd managed had seemingly led me directly into the lion's den. The tension wasn't about being found out anymore. It was about the unbearable weight of pretending I wasn't lost. Reconciliation, if it was even possible, would take a humility I wasn't sure I possessed, and the clock was now ticking down to a dinner party that felt more like a tribunal. The rain was a curtain, separating us from the warm, lit world inside. Jason turned from the railing, his face shadowed in the dim light from the kitchen window. He looked wary, braced for another blow. "Tell me what?" he asked. My mouth was dry. The words were a boulder in my throat. I wrapped my arms around myself, shivering, though the cold wasn't from the air. The night I babysat Noah, I didn't just come early to help. He said nothing, just waited. His silence was worse than anger. After you and Melissa left, after Noah was asleep, I forced myself to look at him, to meet his eyes in the half-light. "I took your car key. I got in your car. I drove it out of the garage with the intention of leaving it in a bad part of the city to be stolen." I hurled the words into the space between us like stones, waiting for them to land, to shatter something. His expression didn't change at first. Then, slowly, confusion knit his brows together. Not anger, not yet, just pure, uncomprehending confusion. "What? Why would you?" He trailed off, his mind clearly racing, trying to fit this jagged, senseless piece into the puzzle of our strained relationship. "Because I was angry." The confession burst out of me, hot and desperate. "I was so angry at you for what you did, and I was angry at Melissa for taking you back, and I was angry that my anger didn't seem to matter anymore. I wanted you to lose something. I wanted there to be a consequence I could see. I wanted..." My voice broke. I wanted revenge. The word hung in the damp air. Ugly, final. Jason stared at me. He took a slow step back, leaning against the patio railing as if his legs wouldn't hold him. He looked from me to the dark shape of his sedan in the garage, then back to me. The confusion was clearing, replaced by a dawning, horrified understanding. You were going to... He ran a hand over his face. But you didn't. Why didn't you? A sob escaped me, harsh and involuntary. Because of Noah. I swallowed the salt in my throat. I found his drawing. The one that said my family is back. I was halfway to the city when I saw it. And I couldn't. I couldn't be the one to break it again. He was silent for a long time, listening to the rain. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and thick with an emotion I couldn't name. So you brought it back. I nodded, wiping my nose with the back of my hand, feeling like a child. I brought it back. Melissa found me in the kitchen. She thought I was having a breakdown over your sin. The irony was bitter as gall. He let out a long, shaky breath. It wasn't a sigh of relief. It was the sound of a man recalculating the entire world. Does she know? No. The word was a whisper. And I can't tell her. It would destroy her. It would destroy whatever peace she's managed to find. That's why I've been the way I've been. It's not just about you anymore. It's about this thing I'm carrying. He pushed off from the railing and took a few steps toward me, not threateningly, but with a focused intensity. Look at me, Alice. I forced my eyes up. What you planned to do was wrong. It was malicious, and it was petty, and it would have hurt my wife and my son all over again. His words were clear, measured. He wasn't yelling, but each one landed with precision. You let bitterness turn you into someone who would hurt an innocent child to get back at me. Each sentence was a verdict, and I accepted every one. I know. But you stopped. He said it as if he were just realizing it himself. You saw Noah's picture, and you stopped. You turned around. You brought it back. He shook his head slowly. Do you have any idea how few people in the grip of that kind of hate would have turned the car around? I hadn't thought of it that way. I'd only seen the failure, the near miss. I'd seen myself as a would-be criminal. He was seeing a choice, a terrible choice, but a choice nonetheless. I'm not telling you this to be forgiven, I said, echoing his own words from my apartment. I don't deserve that from you. I'm telling you because I can't sit at your table anymore with this between us. I can't watch you try and Melissa heal while I'm rotting inside from my own secret. My dad thinks I'm just being hard on you. He doesn't know I'm a hypocrite. Jason looked past me, through the glass door to where our family was laughing softly, clearing a table, living a life. Mercy, he said, almost to himself. What? That's what stopped you. It wasn't fear. It wasn't logic. It was mercy. For Noah. Maybe even a little for Melissa. He looked back at me, and his eyes were different. The wariness was still there, but it was mixed with something else, a painful kinship. You think I don't know what it's like to be in the grip of something that makes you do terrible, selfish things? To hate yourself for it, even as you're doing it? I know that road, Alice. I walked it for 6 months. The only difference is, nobody's picture stopped me. I had to crash into the consequences head on. His understanding was a different kind of agony. I wanted him to rage at me. I wanted him to tell me he'd call the police, that he'd tell Melissa, that he'd make me pay. That would have been easier than this shared, wretched humanity. What do I do? The question was a plea, small and broken in the rainy dark. He was quiet for another long moment. I don't know, he said honestly. But I know what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to tell Melissa. My head snapped up. What? Why? Because it would hurt her to no purpose, he said. His voice was firmer now, resolute. It would only be punishment. And I am done with causing her pain. My job now is to protect her peace, not disrupt it. He met my gaze. This is between you and me. And, I guess, between you and God. The reprieve felt like a trap. So, I just live with it? Pretend? No, he said sharply. You don't pretend. You live in the truth of it. You let the weight of what you almost did teach you something. You let it change you. He gave a grim, hollow laugh. Welcome to the club of people who have to wake up every day and choose to be better than their worst mistake. It's a miserable club. But you're in it now. The patio door slid open. Melissa stood there, a dish towel in her hands, her face etched with concern. Everything okay out here? You've been out here a long time. It's cold. The normal world rushed back in. The lie of the evening reasserted itself. But something between Jason and me had shifted. The secret was no longer mine alone to carry. It was a burden we now held on opposite ends, a strange, twisted bridge over the chasm. Yeah, Jason said, his voice returning to a normal pitch. We're okay. Just talking. We'll be in a minute. Melissa's eyes searched my face. I knew I looked wrecked. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Okay, don't catch cold. She closed the door, leaving us again in the rainy semi-darkness. Jason looked at me. We should go in. I can't, I whispered. I can't go back in there and have pie. Then don't, he said. It wasn't harsh. It was practical. Tell them you're not feeling well. It's the truth. Go home. He was right. I had reached my limit. The confession had emptied me out. I was a shell. Thank you, I said, the words utterly inadequate. For not. He held up a hand, cutting me off. Don't. This isn't me being gracious. This is me trying. One broken piece at a time. To not be the man who destroys things anymore. Including your relationship with your sister. He paused. But Alice? This can't happen again. Any of it. The anger, the distance, or the revenge. We have to find a way forward, or this family won't make it. It was a condition, a boundary. And it was fair. I nodded, unable to speak again. I turned and opened the patio door. I walked through the living room, past my puzzled parents and my worried sister, muttering something about a migraine coming on. I grabbed my coat and left. As I drove home through the rain-slicked streets, the pressure in my chest had changed. The secret was out. To one person. The worst had happened. I had been seen in my true, ugly colors, and I had not been destroyed. I had been given a staggering, unearned gift. Silence. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a stay of execution. A chance. But as I lay awake in my bed that night, a new and more terrifying question took shape. Jason had shown me a mercy I did not deserve. He had chosen to absorb the shock of my betrayal to protect Melissa. He had practiced the very grace he was learning to receive. The question that now haunted me, that made sleep impossible, was this. If he could extend that to me after what I'd almost done, what did that mean? I now had to find a way to extend to him. The cliffhanger was no longer about being caught. It was about the terrifying, costly prospect of having to genuinely, quietly, and from a place of humiliating self-knowledge, begin to forgive. The silence Jason gave me was a prison of grace. For days, I moved through my life like a ghost, the weight of his decision pressing down on me. He hadn't forgiven me. He'd spared me. And in doing so, he had handed me a moral debt I had no idea how to repay. The anger I'd worn like armor now felt like a cheap, ugly costume. Without it, I was shivering and exposed. I went to work. I taught my classes. But I was going through the motions. The collage project ended, and we started a unit on pottery. The clay can be reshaped, I told my students, demonstrating on the wheel, as long as it stays wet and pliable. But if it hardens in a shape you don't want, you have to crush it, soak it, and start again from a lump. I felt like the hardened clay. The shape I was in, bitter, isolated, hypocritical, was useless. But the process of being crushed and soaked sounded agonizing. A few days after the disastrous dinner, a package arrived at my apartment. No return address. It was a small, heavy box. With a sense of dread, I opened it. Inside, nestled in bubble wrap, was a mug. It was clearly handmade, glazed in imperfect swirls of blue and green. A note card was tucked beside it. Alice, I've been taking a pottery class. Part of the whole new hobbies for a new mind thing. This was my first semi-successful piece. I know it's not much, and I know a mug doesn't fix anything, but I was thinking about what breaks and what gets mended. I'm learning that some things can be put back together. Even if you can always see the cracks. This is for you. No strings. Jason. I held the mug. It was clumsy, thick in some places, and thin in others. The handle was a little off-center. It was the most beautiful, terrible thing I'd ever received. It was a tangible offer of peace from the man I'd tried to hurt. It was also a mirror he was trying to mend. What was I doing? I placed the mug on my kitchen counter. Every time I saw it, it accused and invited me in equal measure. The following Sunday, I didn't just sit in the church parking lot. I got out of my car. I walked past the memorial garden and through the heavy wooden doors. The service had already started. I slipped into the very back row behind a pillar. Mrs. Henderson, 3 rows up, turned and saw me. She didn't wave or make a scene. She just smiled, a small, warm curve of her lips, and turned back around. It felt like being seen and accepted in the same glance. The sermon was about the parable of the unmerciful servant. The pastor talked about the king who forgave an unimaginable debt, and the servant who then refused to forgive a tiny debt owed to him. I'd heard it 100 times, but that day, it wasn't a story about someone else. I was the unmerciful servant. God had forgiven me a debt of sin, of pride, of my own failure that was like 10,000 talents. And I was choking Jason over 100 denarii. Not just choking him, but planning to burn his whole field down over it. The realization didn't come as a gentle nudge. It came as a wave of nausea. My fingers curled around the pew in front of me. The gap between the forgiveness I'd received and the forgiveness I was withholding was a canyon, and I was hanging by my fingertips over the edge. After the service, I bolted before anyone could talk to me. I drove to a park by the river, a place Melissa and I used to go as kids. I sat on a bench, watching the brown, churning water carry leaves away. I have to forgive him. The thought was clear, and it was terrifying. It felt like surrendering, like letting him win, like saying what he did was okay. But the mug, the parable, Jason's painful mercy, they were all pointing to a different truth. Forgiving him wasn't about him at all. It was about setting down the boulder of bitterness I'd been carrying for over a year. My arms were tired. My back was breaking. But how? How do you forgive when the hurt feels fresh, when the betrayal still echoes? I didn't have the emotional strength to manufacture a feeling I didn't have. A memory surfaced, unbidden. It was from years ago, after our grandpa died. Melissa was maybe 10, sobbing uncontrollably. My mom held her and said, "You don't have to stop missing him today, honey. Just try, today, to remember one good thing about him. That's enough for now." Maybe forgiveness was like that. Not a grand, one-time feeling, but a daily, small choice. A decision to not pick the boulder back up each morning. I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over Melissa's name. I needed a connection to something real. Something before the rupture. I typed a message, erasing it 3 times before I sent it. "Hey, remember that time we tried to build a raft out of logs and pool noodles at this park and it sank in 30 seconds? What were we thinking?" I held my breath. 3 dots appeared. Then her reply. "We were thinking we were brilliant adventurers." I think I still have the scar on my knee from the rusty nail. I miss those pool noodles. It was a tiny thread. A filament of shared history that predated Jason, predated the affair, predated my own darkness. I clung to it. Me too. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a beginning. A turning of my face, just a degree, away from the cold wall I'd built and toward the warmth of a relationship I still loved. The next step was harder. I needed to see Jason. Not at a family event, not by accident, on purpose. I texted him, the words feeling alien and stiff. "Thank you for the mug. It's good. Can we talk? On neutral ground?" He suggested a coffee shop halfway between my apartment and his office. A public, safe space. When I arrived, he was already there, at a small table in the corner, 2 mugs steaming in front of him. He stood up when I approached, a reflex of politeness that felt strangely formal. "I got you a latte," he said. "I remembered you liked the vanilla ones." The mundane kindness was disarming. "Thanks." We sat. The noise of the shop provided a blanket of privacy. "I got your text," he said. "You wanted to talk." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. "I'm trying," I blurted out. To do what you said. To be better than my worst mistake. And part of that, I think, is that I need to stop punishing you. I couldn't say the big word yet. Forgive. It was too heavy. But I don't know how. The anger. It's been my home for so long. Letting it go feels like walking out into the cold with no coat. He nodded slowly, staring into his black coffee. I understand that better than you might think. Letting go of the selfishness, the lies I was living, it felt like losing my skin. It was excruciating. He looked up. You don't have to do it all at once, Alice. And you don't have to do it for me. Do it for you. And for Melissa. And for Noah. It doesn't feel fair, I whispered, the old grievance rising. You get to be the repentant one. The one who did the big, bad thing and is now on a redemption tour. What do I get? I just get to be the lesser person who's struggling to catch up. A flicker of pain crossed his face. Is that what you think this is? A tour? Alice, every day is a battle. Every time I see the hurt in her eyes when an old song comes on, every time I have to report where I'm going, every time I look at Noah and wonder if he'll ever know what I did, it's a fresh hell. There's no trophy for this. Just a hard-won, fragile peace. And the chance to wake up tomorrow and try again. His raw honesty stripped my self-pity away. He wasn't winning. He was just fighting a different, quieter war on the same battlefield. I'm sorry, I said. And for the first time, it wasn't just sorry for almost stealing his car. It was sorry for reducing his struggle to a narrative. Sorry for needing him to be the villain so I could be the righteous victim. He accepted the apology with a slight dip of his head. So am I. Every day. We sat in silence for a minute, drinking our coffee. It wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't hostile. Can I ask you something? I said. Why did you stay? After I told you what I did. You could have used it. You could have made me the bad guy. He thought for a long moment. Because, he said quietly, when you're drowning in the consequences of your own sin, the last thing you want is to watch someone else start to drown in theirs, even if they pushed you in first. He met my eyes. Mercy is the only thing that makes the air breathable again. For anyone. Mercy. The word from the patio. It had spoken louder than my anger that night in the car. And now, Jason was offering me a sip of the same water. Not because I was thirsty, but because he knew the taste of salt. I left the coffee shop feeling wobbly, like a newborn foal on untested legs. I hadn't forgiven him, but I had acknowledged the need to. I had shared a space with him without venom. It was a microscopic shift, but in the geology of the heart, continents move 1 millimeter at a time. That night, I took the clumsy blue and green mug from my counter. I made tea in it. I held its imperfect weight in my hands, tracing the uneven ridges with my thumb. It was a mended thing. It would never be what it was before it was fired. It would always be Jason's first, flawed attempt. Maybe, I thought, that's what we all were. Flawed attempts. Mended, crackled vessels. The only choice was whether to hold something bitter or something nourishing inside. I chose to drink my tea, and as the warm liquid filled the mug, I whispered a prayer that was more feeling than words, a plea for the strength to choose mercy again tomorrow, and the day after that, until the choice became a habit, and the habit became a new shape for my heart. But as I set the empty mug down, I knew the hardest part was still to come. Jason and I had found a shaky peace. Melissa was still on the other side of a wall I'd built, loving me, missing me, and completely unaware of the darkness that had festered in my heart towards her. The truth still stood between us, and grace demanded that eventually, walls had to come down. I had confessed to the one I wronged second. The one I had wronged first, my sister. By abandoning her in her forgiveness, still waited for her sister to come home, and I had no idea how to cross that bridge without destroying it. The truce with Jason was a fragile thread. The mug sat on my counter, a daily reminder of the mercy I'd been shown and the mercy I was failing to give. I started texting Melissa more silly memes, questions about Noah, memories of our childhood. It was stilted at first, like speaking a language I'd forgotten, but gradually the muscle memory of being sisters began to return. Yet, the secret sat between us like a third person in the room. I had confessed to the one I'd plotted against, but the one I'd truly betrayed, my sister. By withholding my love and condemning her choice, still didn't know the depth of my failure. Every kind text she sent felt like a gift I was stealing. Every time she said, "I love you," I felt the lie of my omission. I kept going to church, sitting in the back. I was listening now, not just hiding. The pastor began a series on the life of Joseph. I knew the story, the favored son, sold into slavery by his brothers, who later rise to power and save them from famine. When the brothers come begging for food, Joseph has them in his absolute power. He could have had them killed. He could have enslaved them. He could have simply turned them away. The sermon focused on the moment Joseph reveals his identity. Genesis 45:5 flashed on the screen. And now, do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. The pastor said Joseph saw a bigger story. He didn't minimize their sin. He called it what it was they sold him. But he reframed it within God's redemptive purpose. His mercy wasn't forgetfulness. It was a profound reinterpretation of his own pain. I sat in the pew, tears streaming silently down my face. I wasn't Joseph. I was the jealous brother. I had sold my relationship with my sister for a handful of pride and anger. But the principle held. Mercy meant reframing the story. Could I reframe mine? Not as, my sister betrayed me by forgiving her husband, but as God allowed this pain to expose the rot in my own heart, so he could begin to heal it. It was a Thursday evening when the reckoning came. Melissa called. Her voice was tense. Alice, can you come over? Jason's working late, and Noah's asleep. I need to talk to you. A cold dread settled in my stomach. He told her. He'd changed his mind. The reprieve was over. I drove to Raytown, my hands slick on the wheel, rehearsing apologies that sounded hollow even in my head. She opened the door before I could knock. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She led me to the living room but didn't sit. She hugged herself, pacing in front of the fireplace. What's wrong? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She stopped and faced me. You tell me, Alice. There was no anger in her voice, just deep, weary confusion. Something is going on with you and Jason. You've been different. You two talked at the dinner. You've been texting me more. But there's this thing. I can feel it. He's been quieter, more thoughtful. You look at him differently now. Not with hate, but with, I don't know, guilt? What happened on that patio? My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The wall was coming down, not with a dramatic explosion, but with a quiet, persistent knock from the sister who knew me too well. I could have lied. I could have made something up. But the weight of the secret and the growing desire for the clean air of truth was too much. You're right, I said, my legs giving way. I sank onto the couch. There is something, I told her. Everything. Starting from the night of the babysitting, the plan formed in bitterness, the drive through the dark, the drawing on the seat, the turning around. I told her about the shame, the garage, her finding me in the kitchen, my false breakdown. I told her about Jason coming to my apartment, his apology, and then my confession to him on the patio. I told her about his silence, his choice to protect her peace, about the mug, about the coffee shop. I spoke in a monotone, my eyes fixed on a stain on the carpet, unable to look at her. The silence in the room was absolute. I finally forced myself to glance up. Melissa was standing perfectly still, her face pale. She wasn't crying. She looked stunned, as if the world had just tilted on its axis. You, she began, then stopped. You were going to commit a felony? To get back at him? To get back at us? Yes. Because you were angry at me for forgiving him? Yes. She took a sharp breath like someone who'd been punched. All this time, I thought you were just struggling. I thought you were hurt for me. But you were plotting. You were becoming someone I don't even know. Her voice broke on the last word. And Jason knew? This whole time? He found out on the patio. He asked me not to tell you. He said it would only hurt you to no purpose. A harsh, brittle laugh escaped her. So, my husband and my sister have been sharing a secret about how my sister tried to destroy our family, and you both decided what was best for me? So, the pain in her eyes was now mixed with a blazing fury. Do you have any idea how condescending that is? How alone that makes me feel? Again, her anger was justified. It was a new betrayal. layered on the old ones. "I'm sorry," I said, the words utterly inadequate. "I was a coward. I am a coward." "Yes, you are!" she shot back, tears finally spilling over. "You were my big sister. You were supposed to be the strong one. And when things got hard, when I chose a path you didn't like, you didn't just walk away. You turned into someone dark. You wanted to hurt us. You wanted to hurt my son's father." She wiped her face angrily. "Do you know what the worst part of all this is? The very worst part?" I shook my head, numb. "It's that I understand it." She sank into the armchair opposite me, her anger deflating into a profound sadness. "I understand the rage that makes you want to break things. I felt it. I wanted to smash his phone, burn his clothes, scream until my voice gave out. But I didn't. Because I had Noah, and because somewhere buried under the hurt, I still loved him." She looked at me, her gaze direct and piercing. "Who did you have, Alice? Who did you love enough to stop you from breaking everything?" The question hung in the air. I had no answer. I'd had no one. I'd pushed everyone away. "I had no one," I whispered, voicing the bleak truth. "I only had the anger, and it was eating me alive." We sat in the heavy quiet for a long time. The clock on the wall ticked. "Jason showed you mercy," she said finally. "He did. And you're trying to forgive him." "I'm trying." She nodded slowly, absorbing it all, the ugly, tangled mess of sin and consequence and feeble attempts at grace. "I have to forgive you both," she said, more to herself than to me. "Him for the affair. You for this. And I have to forgive you for keeping this from me." She let out a shuddering sigh. "It's so exhausting. This family is built on a foundation of apologies." "It doesn't have to be," I said, a spark of clarity igniting. "Maybe it's not a foundation of apologies. Maybe it's a foundation of mercy. Jason gave it to me. I'm trying to give it to him. And you," my voice cracked, "you've been trying to give it to everyone from the beginning. You were just way ahead of us." A single, fresh tear traced a path down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. "I don't want to have dinner with you guys next week," she said quietly. My heart sank. "I want to have dinner with you tomorrow," she continued. "Just you and me and Noah, at my house. We'll order pizza, we'll watch a stupid movie. We won't talk about any of this. We'll just be sisters. We have to remember how to do that first, before we can be a family again." It wasn't absolution. It was a path. A small, simple, terrifyingly normal path forward. It was a quiet miracle. "I'd like that," I said, my throat tight. She stood up. "You should go now, I'm tired, and I need to talk to my husband." I drove home in a daze. The truth was out. The world had not ended. It had simply become real again, scarred and fragile, but real. The next night, I went over. We ate cheese pizza. We let Noah put stickers all over our arms. We watched an animated movie about a talking dog. We laughed at the dumb parts. We didn't talk about the past. It was awkward at first, the ghost of the secret still in the room. But slowly the old rhythm returned, a shared glance. A simultaneous reach for the last breadstick. A collective groan at the movie's cheesy climax. When I left, Melissa hugged me at the door. It wasn't the fierce, clinging hug of old. It was careful, testing, but it was a hug. "Love you, Al," she said. "Love you too, Mel." A week later, my parents were back in town. Another dinner was proposed. This time, I offered to host at my apartment, a neutral space. I made spaghetti, a simple, hard-to-ruin meal. Melissa and Jason arrived together, holding hands, a united front. Noah raced in to show me his new toy truck. The dinner was not perfect. There were still pauses, moments of careful navigation, but the poison was draining. My dad told a long, rambling story. My mom fussed over the salad. Jason helped me clear plates without being asked. Melissa and I rolled our eyes at our mom in unison. As we ate store-bought chocolate cake, Noah, sticky-faced and happy, climbed into my lap. He put his head on my shoulder, smelling of sugar and little boy. I held him, his warm weight a grounding force. Jason caught my eye from across the table. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Not of triumph, but of recognition. We were here. We had made it to the table, not as adversaries, but as survivors of the same shipwreck, washed up on the same shore of grace we'd never deserved. I looked at my sister, who was smiling at something my dad said. I looked at my nephew, sleeping now in my arms. I looked at the man I was learning to forgive, who had first forgiven me. The opening hook of my story was that moment in the garage, keys in hand, anger roaring in my ears. Mercy spoke louder that night. It was a small voice, a child's crayon drawing, but it was enough to make me turn the car around. And Mercy kept speaking. In a handwritten verse from an old woman. In a clumsily made mug. In a sister's weary choice to share a pizza. It never shouted down my anger. It just outlasted it. It waited, patiently, for the storm to wear itself out. And then it whispered, "Okay, now we can begin." I didn't get revenge. I got something harder and infinitely better. I got my family back, cracks and all. And I got a faith that was no longer a list of rules, but the story of a mercy that had pursued me, even into my own garage, and had never, ever let me go.